What's going on, good people? It's your boy John, the Date Dr. Clark, and I want to chat about the 5 toxic reasons as to why we tend to stay in these type of relationships and or marriages. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Issue number 1. A lot of times, I'm going to go ahead and be upfront with you guys because that's the only way I know how to be. A lot of times we may make a choice to stay in that unhappy, to stay in that miserable, to stay in that lack of carefree or that lack of love style of relationship or marriage because we don't want the world to see that we failed. We don't want the world to see that we failed. We don't want the world to see that it didn't work out. We don't want the world to see that our marriage or our relationship isn't as glorified or isn't as glamorified as far as how we try to portray it on social media or how we try to portray it towards our family and friends. We don't want the world to see that maybe things aren't as good as we make them out to be. We don't want the world to see that maybe he or she is really not as happy as it appears to be. And unfortunately, that's a lot of our relationships. Unfortunately, that's a lot of our marriages today. And it's unfortunate that's kind of how we kind of perceive these things. And if you think about it, if our main focus, our main objective is to be more so reconnaissance of what everybody else is thinking of our relationship, how come you didn't have everybody walking you down the aisle when it was time to repeat after the preacher? How come you didn't have everybody walking down the aisle with you just in general? How come you didn't invite everybody to your wedding? How come everybody wasn't there when you asked for her hand in marriage? How come everybody wasn't there for the proposal? How come everybody wasn't there for the bridal shower or the bridal party or the baby shower? Ladies and gentlemen, do you hear what it is that I'm saying? The more we include those negative people, the more we include the world, the more we include popularity into our relationship, into our marriage, the less time we have to spend with each other. The less time we have to spend with each other, the less we make and have time to spend to each other. But not to focus too much on the first thing, because that's kind of one of the 5 reasons as to why, we still tend to stay in those toxic relationships and no marriages. And that's a matter of, being very adamant about whether or not the world knows that we failed or not. That's thing number 1. So what about thing number 2? What's the second reason as to why we tend to stay in those negative or those toxic relationships? A lot of times we kind of want to make a choice to stay solely on the kids. A lot of times we only want to make it work just so we don't see Becky and Johnny see that maybe we possibly failed. Just because we don't want Becky and Johnny to grow up without a 2-parent household. Just because we don't want Becky and Johnny to see that, well, maybe my mother and my father didn't work out, so maybe that's going to crucify my life in the future. A lot of times we want to stay for the sake of the kids. But a lot of times we're doing more harm than good. A lot of times we're doing more harm than good. A lot of times we're doing more harm than good. I realize kids aren't as of a genius. I realize kids aren't as brilliant, but they are. Kids are very intelligent. Kids are very brilliant. A child can know right from wrong. A child can know when his mother is happy versus his mother being devastated. Just as much as a female child can realize if her dad is happy, just as much as her father being very miserable. So ladies and gentlemen, I want you all to take heed. I want you all to pay close attention to the second notion I've kind of stated. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the kids. But are we doing more harm than good when we stand solely on the strength of the kids? Are we doing more harm than good? Just because Becky, Sue, and John maybe see that we're not working out, just because we've decided to split up, just because we've decided to divorce, who's to say that just because we decide to divorce doesn't mean that we're not going to love our child even much more? It still doesn't mean that we're not going to be there as parents, as co-parenting now for the sake, for the interest, for the emotional well-being, for the spiritual well-being of our child. So we can do a lot of that outside of the relationship, outside of the marriage. But imagine how much more harm we're going to do by staying and being miserable and having our child to kind of figure out that something's wrong with mommy or something's really wrong with daddy. So I kind of want you all to be recognizant of that. Pay attention to that. Be mindful of that. Are we doing more harm than good by staying on the strength of just the kids to kind of really force the marriage to work? Those are your main 2 things. The first thing was, the fear of the world seeing that we maybe didn't work out. The second thing was staying solely on the strength of the kids. So let's initially go over the third thing as causes one of those main issues as to why we choose to stay in those toxic reasons. And a lot of times I see this third one, not wanting to start over. I get it. Everybody really doesn't want to start off by being single. Not everybody wants to get back on the dating phase. Not everybody wants to start over by going on the first date, asking best friend as to whether or not you should give it up, asking best friend, if he or she is the one. I get it. But why wouldn't you want to start over? Why wouldn't you want to have a fresh start? Why wouldn't you want to have a clean slate? Why wouldn't you want to start fresh with someone else where you not have to be very mindful of whether or not you can trust this individual? Why wouldn't you want to start over to a place where you're not as adamant about things? You're not as adamant about whether or not he or she is out there cheating on you right now. You're not as adamant about whether or not he or she is really at work. You're not as adamant about whether or not this person has decided to either want to come home after a stressful day to place hands on you. You're not as adamant about whether or not, there's a lot of intimacy in your relationship. You're not as adamant about some of the things you kind of wanted to say, but you're choosing not to say. Ladies and gentlemen, do you hear what it is that I'm saying? Why wouldn't you want to start over? But I get it. Sometimes we may not want to start over because we have so much time and so much financial structure and so much energy invested. But imagine how much energy you're losing by staying when you're miserable. Imagine how much energy that you really are wasting. Imagine how much fake energy that you've decided to invest into your relationship now while being miserable. Imagine how much stress you're causing by staying. Imagine how much more money that you're spending to suppress those fake feelings. I'm gonna say it again, just in case one of you got Sprint, AT&T, or T-Mobile. You may have dropped the call, and you may have lost a bit of service, and my screen may be just freezing up on you. But imagine how much anguish, imagine how much lack of financial structure, imagine how much emotional anguish that you're going to go through by staying in something that you're unhappy about, by staying in something that's making you even more miserable than you have to be. So if you think about it, is it really cheaper to keep her? Is it really cheaper to keep her? Is it really cheaper to keep her? Hell no, because stress is super expensive. Staying when you're miserable is super expensive, because when we're stressed out, we do more of those negative things. If you think about what I'm saying, when we're stressed out, we do a heck of a lot more of those unorthodox things that's going to cause us to be even more stressed out. And of course, I can chat about that for the next 30 minutes, but I'm not. So, what's the fourth thing? And sometimes I do see it a lot in my office. Sometimes I do see a lot with my people. The fourth thing is feeling sorry for that other person. A lot of times we don't want to leave that person because maybe they didn't come into the matter with a lot. A lot of times we don't want to leave that person because maybe they don't have much right now. A lot of times we feel like, that we're the majority of the bread, that we're that main breadwinner in a relationship. And if we make a decision to leave, where is that person going to go? But if you think about it, that's not how life is. Yes, I realize it says in the word. Yes, I realize we preach a lot in the church where it talks about we should be able to help our fellow man and our fellow brother and our fellow sister. But it's a heck of a lot different when we're now intimate. It's a heck of a lot different when we decided to step outside of that friendship to be more of the lovership. Now, when we're in that lovership, it's a matter of dating. It's a matter of getting to know one another. It's a matter of whether or not we can be beneficial to each other on a spiritual, emotional, and physical level, and also an intimacy level. Now, if there's anything that steps outside of that, where both parties are no longer feeling as though they can be beneficial, if we're no longer in a place where we should be equally yoked, if we're no longer in a position where, the Lord kind of feels like, well, maybe John or maybe Becky, maybe you all should kind of split up and try different things and go different ways, because the Lord is going to provide that to you. It's not going to be as clear. But if we're at a place right now where we're at that, we now have to make a decision. Should we now feel like we're at a clutch? Should we now feel as though that we're now at a burden? Should we ever feel as though that we're now obligated to this individual? It's much different when you're married. But if we're in that predicament, if we're in that situation, if it's to the point now where it's time to leave, it's time to go separate ways, but now you focus on feeling sorry for this individual, then you're going to continue to make a choice because you feel sorry for this individual. And what does the average person do when they feel sorry for someone? They try their best to help. They try their best to do a heck of a lot more. But have you ever been in a situation where you've exhausted all available options to help a person and it's just not sticking? It's just not getting to their psyche. It's just not working. What it means is a lot of times is that they're not ready to take your help. They're not ready to be on the same level as your happiness. And when two people are not on the same level, it's going to always be like a balance beam. And that's kind of how the world works sometimes. So, of course, it's a heck of a lot different when you're married, because when you're married, it's all about benefiting both parties. It's all about getting to that even level playing field at times. And, of course, it's all about being equally yoked. Not to say that both parties are going to be 50-50, because there's going to be some times where it's going to be ups and downs. But the beauty of it is, when you see those ups and downs, it's a matter of both parties dedicating both benefits that they can offer to kind of get at an even playing field. So, of course, we kind of went over the first four things, such as, stand for the sake of the children, being very concerned that everybody thinks that you all didn't make it or you all have failed, having that fear of, starting over. And this fourth thing that we kind of touched about is, feeling sorry for the other person. That's never helpful. And last but definitely not least, a lot of times, we stay in these situations due to financial reasons. And of course, I can imagine being with a person that might be making six figures, seven figures, $1 million figure, whatever you want to call it, all those zeros. And I get it. And I realize that money cannot buy you happiness, but sometimes the world say that it can get pretty damn close. But if you think about it, money will never buy you happiness. What happens if the money goes away? Then what? What happens when the money is no longer in the equation? What if you have to go a certain amount of time being broke? And if you think about it, if you tried your best to mask it by allowing money to kind of take over, what happens when that money leaves? Now you're going to be even more miserable times 5. Now you're going to be even more miserable times 5. And of course, coming from me, I know that last one is kind of one of those that's kind of easier said than done. But you have to ask yourself, what if the money was no longer in the picture? And now you're staying there. And now you made that unwise decision to say, I'm going to stay because I don't want to start over with the money. Going back from 6 figures to only making 25 grand. But think about it. If you stay for the money, yes, you're going to be happy from a financial standpoint. But what happens when you all go on a vacation? You're going to spend the money, but you still have to find time to talk. You still have to find time to communicate. You still have to find time to do those things that couples do, because eventually the guy's going to, or the female is going to say, dang, he or she is going to whip me for the money. And it's not going to feel good. It's going to cause even more arguments. It's really going to show the purpose of love. There's going to be those cold days where maybe it's snowing outside or the weather's pretty bad outside, and maybe you all can't really go anywhere morally. That's the question. What about those times that we don't really prepare for? That's the question. So, ladies and gentlemen, with that being said, this is your boy, John the Dr. Clark, touching on about the 5 toxic reasons as to why people tend to stay in these horrific relationships or these horrific marriages. It's unfortunate, but of course, as human beings, we're going to be destined to make these type of decisions. But the real question now is, what are you ready and willing to do to step outside of those 5 basic reasons? Are you ready and willing to stop staying with this individual because you feel sorry for this person? Are you ready and willing to stop staying with this person just because you fear starting over? Are you ready and willing to stop dealing with this person outside of the sake of the kids? And are you ready and willing to deal with the fact that, it's okay to fail. It's okay for the world to see that maybe things didn't work out. It's a better feeling knowing that things can work out with a better person and to be single for a while. All right, good people, it's your boy, John the Dr. Clark. Feel free to share this video. Feel free to like my page. Feel free to follow me. Feel free to go on my main website, www.datedoctor.com, DATEDOCTA.com. All right, good people, have a good day.